This is a clemency hearing for your conviction, 25 to life. Since you've been in custody, you've been involved in a theater program.
Colman, welcome to the Awards Tour podcast.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Good to be here.
I really want to start with this incredible film that you're a part of, Sing Sing. It is, I've been thinking about it since I saw it, the incredible cast members, your performance, and everything that you're doing. But I would be remiss, since this is the first time I'm seeing you since your incredible Oscar run for Rustin last year, that I didn't ask the question that the internet wants to know, which is, why did you not take your foot off of everyone's neck for that entire award season with the way that you look? Don't play.
Listen.
Don't play. Listen. I mean, we will talk about your Oscar-nominated, Emmy-nominated, incredible body of work, but sir, the best dress lists are still shook.
Man, you know what? Maybe I wanted to come in with a little bit of a rumble and then set off an earthquake. Why not? Because I feel like, I know what the idea of showing up, what that means and how we show up. I'm not only representing myself, I'm representing so many people. So I feel like I had to put the pressure on. I love the fact that I would get to some award shows and I would see my fellow brothers. I'm like, so is that what you're wearing? You gonna step it up next time? Come on. I'm like, come on, let's bring our games up together. You know what I mean? I feel like it's a brotherhood. I want to have fun with it. So if I'm stunting, I want everybody else to stunt too. I really do. I think we can all, there's room for all of us to stunt.
I'm so glad you said that, because that's what I was thinking. I was thinking seriously, like, if I was showing up that night, I'd be like, I should just go home. Like, literally.
I just go home and rethink my life. Listen, I love it. I love it. Like last night I went to the ESPYs and I wore this beautiful Louis Vuitton jacket and I just felt like $1 million. I think it's a great tool because it's how it makes me feel. I want to feel like I'm the whole party. I want to feel like an event, so I feel like, especially during the award season, I wanted to always walk in rooms feeling like light and I'm having a good time and I'm so happy that I'm there. I don't want to recede into the background because that's not what brought me there, which was like, I'm there with representing many people who poured into me. So I got to show up for all of us. I'm showing up for you, Jacqueline.
Hey, listen, I lived for every fit. It was like, it became like my highlight of every, because these events get old after a while, but I was like, well, what's Colman got on? Like, you know what I mean? Like there would be a moment at least for me to do that. I'm going to bring it now to the movie, but real quick, what was your favorite outfit? Was it the Louis? Because you had so many, and I mean, so many outfits that people were talking about. Do you have a favorite one if you had to pick one from that incredible run? Because that was the other thing that people don't realize about Oscar runs. It's like, it's not one outfit. It's like 15 to 20 to 30, maybe 40.
It's many. I think the one that I felt my best, which was the gold. It was like gold and a powder blue shirt, sort of gold, mustard gold trousers, gold boots, and this phenomenal gold coat that Valentino did. It was just beautiful because I felt like it felt sexy. It felt like a throwback. The way the pants flowed and the cut, I felt like it was classic. I feel like you couldn't tell if that photo was taken now in 2024 or that was taken in 1972. It was hot.
That's a good year.
It was hot. Yeah, we were wearing sexy cuts. Everybody was like giving you body back then. You know what I mean?
I love the 70s. Like, that's my favorite year for fashion, movies, everything. So you're preaching to me. All right. Well, let's bring it back to what has brought you here again, which, look, I think in your career, I can say this, and we're definitely going to talk a little bit about some of those chapters that I feel you haven't talked as much about from your incredible history. As I like to say, you're another one of these 20-year overnight sensations.
Right.
But this particular performance, there's such intentionality to it, to having, a cast comprised of persons who were either formerly incarcerated or formerly convicted of a crime, newcomers like Clarence Macklin, in addition to the fact that you are stepping into a leadership role on this one. This is the first thing post-Oscar nomination. There's just so many things I think you were balancing with this. What sort of led you to this project and to this one? Because this is a labor of love. Like, I was reading the press notes. This was not something where you just said, yeah, we're going to go do the incarceration and just do it. No, there's so much more to this project.
I think everything about the design of this film has been very mindful and intentional and heartful. And I think in the climate of film, sometimes it's hard to get there. You're trying to look at, will it make a buck? Will the story make a difference in this way, shape, or form? And I feel like I think culturally, we're trying to shift culture with this film and thought, not only about Black and brown men who are incarcerated, but also about these programs that are actually doing the work of healing and rehabilitation. But I know that my partners, and I call them my partners, not just my director, Greg Guidar and Clint Bentley and Monique Wilson. I think they were very intentional about how they wanted to build this out and collaborate in every single way, making sure that a lot of the members, since it is based on some real stories and real experiences, they wanted to make sure that these folks had a voice in the story. So we collaborated truly on Zooms with each other and talked about the story, talked about what was important to us, what tropes we were not interested in, but we're truly crafting with whatever skills that we had, some from a lived experience, some, and me from my experience of just like wanting to look after Black and brown men and show complex depictions of us, whether we're on the inside or not. That's important to me, like showing our humanity in different ways and how, especially once I found out about this program and what it does, I thought, oh man, this is really dope. It would be really beautiful to tell a story about, at least a smaller story about these men that are trying to do the work and really actively doing the work for their own rehabilitation in a system that's not set up for them. So I got involved because my colleagues had such open hearts about it. Even the way they wanted to build the film, they wanted to build it in a very sort of equitable model that is unheard of, making sure that everybody above and below the line are paid the same rate. And so everyone truly has ownership, not only of their stories, but of the film. So I thought, wow, what a beautiful thing. And if I can give and amplify this film and these stories with my voice, and I can be a leader on this and sort of be the soul of the production to make sure that, hey, we take care of each other in this way to really uphold those values that we all came in with. I know that was my responsibility. And it felt like a true honor. And I'm really happy that we did it the way we did. And we've been very mindful. That's the word. We've been very mindful about the partners that we add on to it. When we, sold it to A24, we felt like, oh, they had the right heart and they would take care of the film and take care of these people's stories. And so even now, as we've been very intentional, premiering at TIFF and then going to South by Southwest, it's just, being like slow and steady. Yes, we started the journey last September coming out on TIFF, and it's been making sure that we're gentle as I believe the work can be, and getting and delivering it to the audiences as it comes out now, and in theaters, which is exciting.
Yeah, and getting it to touch audiences, because I think I read the statistic. This was actually when Sesame Street did their very first sort of, I would say, storyline where they had someone who had a parent who was incarcerated. So they had a parent, and so the story that they brought with that is it's 1 in 4 families are touched by a person or a loved one who's been incarcerated or formerly incarcerated person. And that, to me, I thought this is a moment for a film like this as well, because it isn't always shown. It's more exploitative. It's very different. That, I think, is probably, since you've had so much time with the film, something that you've probably had those conversations with folks. This is the type of film when you're done with the Q&A, they'd be like, I wish they had a program. Like, you're nodding your head. You're like, yes.
They come to me and tell me all their stories. And the one story in particular really affected me, and I'm glad you brought up the Sesame Street of it all, was this young man, I think he was like in early 20s, and he said, thank you so much for this film. He said, I grew up with my father incarcerated, and I think that there's been such a struggle of me understanding and having grace for him. And as he's been trying to do the work for his own rehabilitation in a way. And he said, I finally felt like that you gave me an opportunity to express some things and understand how it's been affecting me and how I can shift my perspective in some way. So I realized that the film was working on so many levels. It's working on families, all the families that are affected by this. So people going into this film not knowing, but I guess they want to see, sometimes they want to see their dad, their uncle, their brother, their cousin, their sister, their mom. They're like, oh, we get a humanizing experience of these people who are inside, and not sort of catering to these tropes that we've seen over and over again, that we've all been fed, that's sort of like what we believe it is and what we believe is not possible, So this sort of, I think, smashes a nice little fist into the industrial prison complex and helps you see these folks as people.
In addition to all of that we discussed, we haven't even touched about the incredible depth that you bring to Divine G and his journey as a character, and where that character who was wrongfully convicted of a crime and is still managing to try and squeeze as much empathy and humanity out of his daily existence, despite the reality that he's around. That's a hard lift on a normal set with every bit of resource in front of you. How did you balance that? Because this is not your first rodeo, number one on the call sheet, but I feel like the demands of this performance in particular, both your work as a leader amongst these folks, but also just trying to get through what you had to do to be honor and true to your character. How did you balance all of these sort of competing interests and still produce this incredible work?
First of all, thank you. And I think honestly, I finished most of principal photography for Rustin. I moved on to the color purple, and then I had 18 days to shoot this film, and then I was going back to pickups for Rustin. So I already started to begin my journey sort of taking more of a leadership role on sets, and not just as a leading actor, number one on the call sheet, but being responsible for the fullness and the like, how is it going to be made and the soul of the production, and influencing my fellow co-stars and making sure that everyone's cared for. So I didn't take that role lightly, and I think it started with Rustin, but it started even before Rustin. I've always sort of been, whether I was the number one on the call sheet or not, I was always looking after the company. I was always looked at as being sort of like in the theater, we call it the equity deputy. So
I like that word, equity deputy.
I've always had that role. So I knew that I was prepared for it. And then I needed to take a deeper dive with this because I know that I had a lot of folks who had never been on a film set. And I wanted to take care of them and their stories and make sure that they felt that they could be their best and be vulnerable and be open to whatever this thing that we were crafting together. So I knew that, and then to have the emotional weight of the character. Once I got to know John Divine G. Whitfield, who I portray, I just needed to know a few things about him to find his soul. One is he was wrongfully committed of a crime. And on the inside, he still was going to the law library every day to sort of advocate for himself and advocate for others. He would advocate for many times for other people when they had their parole board hearings and make sure that they were successful. And he never asked for anything back. He said, just do it for someone else. Just, so, I mean, for me, if that's not the epitome of grace and hope and faith, to actually still believe in the system that it can work, the same system that puts you in there wrongfully, you still believe it can work. For me, that unpacked the whole human being, that I thought if I can distill that down into my body, into my actions, and make a complex arc for a 100-hour film, I did my duty. And so I feel like managing that while managing this low-budget film from the inside, really helping to shape scenes, and using my directorial skills with my director, Greg, using my writing skills, and looking at drafts of the script, editing skills as well. They asked me to bring all of it. They asked me to bring all of me, not leave anything behind. And they really did require that and ask for it every single day. So I was in the middle of all of this every single day and every decision as a producer and as an actor. And it was a privilege because I do care. I've always stepped outside of sort of my zone because I care about, well, how's that being looked after? How are we doing that? And it's not like, and it's all because I love what I do and because of love. I come with love energy. I'm not trying to control anything. I just care deeply, and I care about the details, and I care about, I don't know, because I think it's like, I mean, listen, we're charged as actors to hopefully give something that we can't get back. It is an act of service and generosity, and it doesn't stop. I think what afforded me to be able to do this is like, yes, I was on these big, huge sets with all the support and comforts of extraordinary sets and budgets. And then I had to take all that I've learned to the small set where my holding was literally a holding cell. And, it didn't have the comforts, but you know what? All of that was okay because at the end of the day, it was about what we're making and how we're making it. And that we're making sure that we feel good about what we're doing. So it was a true privilege. I had the time of my life for those 18 days,
18 days.
And also they made sure that I not only that I had, my castmates were these men who went through the program, but I had surrounded it with other dear friends of mine, Sharon Washington, who plays the parole board officer, and Sean San Jose, who's my actual best friend, who we started out 30 something years ago together. And he felt like the perfect Mike. And so I wanted to make sure that I needed those anchors so I can go into this with some people that I know and some I don't know. We're going to create this hybrid of a piece.
I'm glad that you brought in your extra skills because I don't think people know. It's like you were adapting plays back in the late 90s. You
Yeah,
were directing
yeah.
on Broadway. You were casting. I mean, I love this fun fact when I tell
Mm.
people, I was like, oh, you think you know Colman Domingo? Who cast the first two seasons of Euphoria? That's the one that they don't know. But speaking of this, writing, acting, producing, all of the stuff that you're doing, that sort of, I think there was a quote where you had told me a while ago, I don't want to ever be sort of taken out of the game. That is very different than what we think of when we think of multi-hyphenates now, because everybody wants to do the actor, writer, director, writer. You will do like craft services, I think. Like you will literally do any aspect of
I really will.
storytelling.
I
Script
really will.
supervising, I think I saw in a couple credits for
I
you
would
as
totally do.
well.
I would do that because you know what I think. I like being a part of getting it done, and I've never been a person that felt like I never just have to be in front of the camera. I'm always very comfortable behind the scenes. I'm comfortable with producing things that have nothing to do with me. I feel like I have a production company. I'm a director, a writer. I write on and do work on all these different platforms and media, musicals, and you name it. I just like to craft the work. And I feel like, and maybe that's it. I feel like I came into this industry liberated without an idea like, oh, I can only do this one thing. I was doing Shakespeare and I was in the circus and I was, producing and directing as a young theater maker in my early 20s. And people would always try to say, well, what do you like to do best though? I'm like, all of it. And for a while, I felt like I had to like sort of like make a narrow vision of who I was, but it just didn't work. It never worked. And so I love that people are discovering that I do all these things, that I have been doing them for years, that this isn't new. Just because I love I especially love when people are like, I didn't know who you were until about a couple of years ago. I'm like, well, you can go back to a whole 33-year history and you'll see that I think it's because I've been shape shifting, especially as a performer and as a creative artist. But I know that I've always looked to people like Christian Bale and Daniel Day-Lewis or Philip Seymour Hoffman or people who, Harry Belafonte, people who really shifted. And so I understand that, like, yeah, people may not know, but then they look back, they're like, oh, you were in The Butler. That was you. And Selma, that was you. Yeah, because I
In
changed my body.
Lincoln, that was
That
you.
was it.
Yeah.
I changed my body. I changed my energy. I changed my weight. I changed my hair. All of it. I've always been a character actor. But like one of my early agents said that I was a character actor in a leading man's body, and it's going to take the world a little longer to understand that you do all of it. And I guess the time is now. They understand now.
I mean, they do. And I mean to ask you this because I meant what I said when I say that you were a 20-year overnight sensation. Like, look, I think the first thing I saw you in that I for sure recognized you in was like Selma, maybe. Maybe right there is like, okay, I know Colman. And then it's like, oh, I've seen him in other things prior to this, but like I knew basically every Black person in that movie I clocked. I was like, all right, we're going to make sure we know every single every single actor in this one. But more particularly for you, what was it for you? Because it is very different now than it was then. What would you say is the one that you felt the change? Because I think as a character actor who has done so many things for so long, who's clearly had a career, you would acutely feel when the switch, when the cool light went hot. What was that role? What was that moment? What was that maybe like, oh, I can't go to the mall like I used to moment? Because I do feel like it is different now.
It is, and I think it was actually Euphoria. I think it's Euphoria. I think Zola arrested people, and people didn't know that I could do that. It's like I can play a type A personality. I can play many things, but I feel like I can play a very strong character and play a very soft character. And I knew that got people on the radar. And then when they saw my work in Euphoria, especially, I think it definitely was about that two-hander episode with me and Zendaya, because that. I know objectively you could see I was bringing in my skills from the theater where I'm not afraid of a 5-page monologue, but that's almost unheard of in film and television. So
Especially
it's like,
TV.
especially TV, you're sort of watching me spin plates and also still be grounded and sort of give a cinematic performance, So I feel like that's when I got on people's true radar because of the zeitgeist that is Euphoria. And then I got a new fan base, young girls and, all that people like, oh, girls screaming in the car when they see me on the 405, just yelling, oh my God. It's kind of awesome. You're like, become a 20-year overnight success for real, because now people And it really did happen in the last maybe couple of years where, oh, I'm not as invisible as I thought I was anymore. Wherever I go, people know this face, even with sunglasses on and a baseball cap. It just doesn't work. But that's okay because I actually get a lot of love. But also, I know how to navigate energetically now when I'm available and when I'm not. Like when I
Oh,
just
that's
need people,
good.
because it's an energy shift actually to know when when you're ready to be Colman Domingo and accessible to everybody, but also the energy where you're like, I'm just trying to just actually go to the market, and you're not as outward as you like to be.
Fair,
Yeah,
fair. And you're in New York. You're a New Yorker mostly,
I'm in
right?
LA. I'm in LA. I'm in
You're in
LA.
LA now. Okay, sorry. I thought you were a New Yorker mostly because I was wondering if like because I feel in New York that anonymity is like a given, and so if you
Yeah,
lose that in New York, you're like, this is not right.
yeah. Well, I lost it in New York too, so I think that's when I knew it was a wrap. But yeah, because
uh,
I go to New York all the time, and I still have my 917 number. But
okay.
it's a bit of a wrap. It's a wrap when you go to like Mexico City and you're wandering around in some remote neighborhood and you're in a vintage shop and then suddenly somebody, oh my God, in Spanish, like they recognize you. Like, wait, what? That's then your brain's like,
Yeah.
yeah, and yeah. So when you know it's global, it's over, or it's just
And it was just beginning. And the one thing I'll also say too is since you say it's more recent, in those previous chapters where you have been a part of things. I mean, you're working with people working on a Steven Spielberg set. You're working with Sam Levinson. You're working with Ava. You're and stuff like that, and doing Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. All of these different kind of sets. All of these different directors, and even going back to maybe even your theater days. I'm curious for you. What has been the set or the experience where you felt that you learned the most that prepared you for this moment that you're currently in, where you really sort of like again, it's not when you're still figuring it out and you're just happy to be there, but it's also not right before you know things are shifting. What was that sort of shift for you in your career?
wow. Immediately, you made me think of Ava DuVernay's Selma because not only of the cast that I was working with, extraordinary cast, but it's the way we made it. I I,
Mm.
I got to know Ava. She did something every single day, and she didn't even recognize she did it. She hugged her principal cast every day and said, "How you doing? You all right? Yeah, I'm good.
Mm.
Good to work." That simple gesture of kindness and care from the top was very meaningful. I saw, oh, that's the way you do it. You
Yeah.
establish a room filled with kindness and love and respect for what you do, and you can get anything. Everybody will give you everything. And she listens to people. Okay, what's your idea? What are you thinking? Great, wonderful. Okay, let's try it.
Yeah.
I love hearing it. Let's try it. It keeps you open. And so I feel like that was a turning point in my film career for sure. Because I'd done some films, but I started to look at the practice of like film sets and television sets and what I can actually bring from the theater to bring to this world that I'm now deeply entrenched in, which is a sense of, I don't know, respect and grace. Um,
Yeah.
it's very important to me. So I think that changed me in
Yeah.
many ways. But also, I learned things from every director. I learned from from Soderbergh, somebody who,
Yeah, the Nick, I
yeah,
forgot. Yeah.
yeah, he knows exactly what he wants. He knows what he's
Yeah.
shooting. It's very clear. So being on his sets, you're not on the sets for long days because he's very clear about the story that he's telling. Or I worked with, I mean, I look at my career now, I'm like, I'm just in awe that I've worked with some of the most talented directors on the planet, and on stage and in film and in television. And I feel very blessed that a lot of these writer directors write for me and write towards my strengths in every single way, or write things that may challenge me, in a
Mm.
great way. So I feel very blessed. I feel like, and maybe I've always believed this, and I believe this as a young actor. Like when they want me, they want all of me, because I don't know how to just come and be. I don't know how to not be a dramaturg. I don't know how to not sit in a rehearsal that I'm not called for and look at the way the shape of it. Because that's how I do my work. I'm like, oh, looking at how we're making the whole thing, and then I may have an opinion on it.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'd like to be in the room as a collaborator because I think that's the way I grew into this work when I started out in the San Francisco Bay Area in the early 90s. I didn't have limitations on what I did. I can always have an opinion over something and get myself involved. So those are the directors and the projects I'm usually drawn to, is where I can be my fullest self.
Yeah, and I will go ahead and say to anybody that was working with you, like, this is not the, no offense, casting you is not the time to cast someone that's just like showing up day of, hit the marks and leave. Those are roles for that. There are
Yeah.
productions for that, and there are moments for that. I just don't think there are ones that lend the talents of you, sir. I'm just saying, like,
Man.
if you want someone, just do it. By the way, there are moments where like that's what's called for. You just need to
Yeah.
come in, hit your mark, don't ask questions, and leave. I just don't think that is the same level of the things that one you're attracted to, but honestly, people would be saying, "Yeah, that's what we want to get him to do,"
Yeah,
and that's
that's never been me because then that doesn't play to my strengths or like
yeah,
you gotta I can even objectively look at my own work and see where I was absolutely liberated. And I think it's
mm,
usually my best work. I can look at Sing Sing objectively, and I think it's some of my best work because I felt completely liberated to express and to try and to figure out. So I feel like I have ownership of the character and the story and even the way we built it. So I feel like Rustin, like I feel like I see
yes,
that, Zola as well. Janixa Bravo
yeah.
she gave me full liberty to create this character. And I think that's the kind of director I am as well. I want people to get in there with me and say, and own the role, and own what
Yeah.
it is.
And I want to talk a little bit too about Sing Sing because there was one aspect. There's the play within the play, right? That is honestly, again, another when you think about why I think this role is something that is going to be exceptional, and it's going to be another one that we're going to be talking about, and we should be talking about for months, is because it's sort of like the Simone Biles effects, as I like to say. It's like, what difficulty level did you have? Like, yeah, you made your movie on the crafty, comfy set in the middle of New Zealand, but like we were literally in a prison complex and no craft services, and I'm doing script revisions. Oh, and I've got to put on a believable Shakespearean performance.
Yeah,
In addition to my character doing that, and
I
yeah,
did
make
my
it their
I did my
performance.
I did my own hair and makeup, and I did my own
Oh, tell
continuity.
me this. Oh,
Oh
hair and
yeah,
makeup too.
yeah, yeah, and continuity. We couldn't afford that, so we just like
Yeah.
there's certain things that we. It was a step above a guerrilla production, so, you know what I mean. But I feel like, but there
Wow.
was so much care in that, but also there was so much. How can I say it? You had to depend on yourself to make sure. Let me go look at that and make sure the continuity is correct from this. You had to care even more. There was no that luxury to have someone else come and take care of certain things. You had to
Yeah.
own that stuff and really look at it. Look at, make sure your beard length is the same length as it was before. Or, hey, I want to add some more gray here because I think he's aging more in those 7 years.
Yeah.
But I don't know, it felt very old school in a way. Because old school back, like prior to the 50s, folks did their own makeup and hair. They made costume decisions and worked with the costume designer and talked about it. And I felt like we did all of that. We were
Yeah.
very true collaborators. And so I feel like there was I think the film required us not to have sort of that sheen of a glossy, big budget film. I think it wouldn't make sense, actually. I
Yeah.
think it made sense that I was staying in a little Airbnb and my best friend literally was staying with me in the bedroom next door. Though
Love that.
it felt like we sort of needed to have that lived experience as we were off screen, coming back in, being cellmates. Whether we realized it or not, we needed that as well for this film.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned that part about it too, because I do think that sort of like removing of it is why it's so rich, why it feels so very lived in. But I love that it's a part of this 2023 for you, where again, in the color purple, also on the Oscar run and release of Rustin, a man who should have been canonized in history already, but finally got his moment. And then you took that all the way to the Academy Awards. And then also with this tiny film, this one in particular, though, and I'm sure there's memories and moments from Rustin and there's memories and moments from The Color Purple. What do you think is going to be the most informative thing that you take from this experience? Because I do feel every work that you do probably shapes you, but this one in particular is one that you're going to kind of tuck underneath your thespian arm like the Heisman and maybe really sort of travel with this through some future performances. I don't know why. I just feel like this is one that sticks with you.
And it does, I think, which is why I don't. It's funny because I've been thinking I need to view the film again to be able to distill it and talk about it even more so because I've only watched it. I watched it at TIFF, and I've seen some cuts of it before it was finessed. But because it lives, it pulls on something with me, and I'm trying to still figure out what that is. But it's very raw, and it's very. I know I'm bearing a bit of my soul too. with film in a unique way, because I care so deeply about my Black and brown brothers and our humanity. And I think I'm still, my answer is I'm still carrying it with me in some way. It feels like I guess I'll tell you, because I guess it's the day of honesty, but the past couple of days of press, I've been on the verge of tears every time I talk about it.
Oh, wow.
Because I'm trying to figure out while I'm in process why. Because I'm getting the film out there and I care so deeply about the film, the themes, and it really is about our humanity. And I think, especially right now when things are so polarizing and it feels so scary to people, our upcoming November, I feel like that this is such an offering of grace and love and pulling people together. And that's very important to me. So it feels very raw that my heart is out there. I think maybe that's it. As I'm speaking about this right now, it feels like my soul and my heart is right out there in the world.
Very vulnerable moment.
Yeah. And I think it's through this work. It is, someone said this to me and I almost like looked away because I think I realized I reveal a lot of my heart in this film. It is not Mr. or The Color Purple. It is not Rustin. It is not Ali. It is more stripped bare. It is a brother who comes from a place like I come from, who I could have been as a Black man in this world. I could be in that situation, very much so. And so I didn't have to pull too far from my experience of being a Black man in America to see how would I do the work to continue to try to find the light, especially in a system that is set up for me not to survive or thrive or be.
Yeah,
I don't have to go too far. So I think it taps into so much of my own vulnerabilities. And so I think maybe that's when I see it, it calls on things that are so exposed in a way that I think is necessary for the film and needed to happen. And I had to lend myself and my craft over to that and find a way to do that. And that's a tough thing to do, to reveal. But I knew that was my task. And I knew I had to do my work as an actor to get myself to that place, to be that vulnerable and that revealing for this character.
Well, I'm glad you did. You've already seen the reaction with critics, with fans that have gotten a chance to see it. And as the film goes wider, more folks will get to see it. But on a more maybe like, it's heavy, right? So before we get out of here, I want to make sure we go to some lightness, which as a literal Renaissance man, I think incarnate. It seems almost hubris to ask you this question, but what haven't you gotten to do that you still want to do? And
what a great question.
This is a scary one because you're going to say something I'm like, we did not see that, but let's go. And now the internet's going to want it. So here's your entree.
You know what I'm thinking now? Listen, I've been playing I'm an architecture nerd, first of all. I'm a design nerd. I love the way things are built. And I feel like I would like to work on designing homes and also clothing.
I knew this. I'm like, this is going to be something completely not even entertainment. He's going to be like, I want to paint. I knew it was going to be something. I had planned this question. I'm like, he's going to say he wants to paint. And abstract art.
I think in everyone's journey, I think in their life's journey, you should be transforming and doing different things. And I thought, I'm almost 55 years old. What if when I was 60, I went to architecture school in like Brazil or something and became an architect? You know what I mean? I really thought these are my dreams. I'm like, yeah, what else do I want to do? And because all I do everyone knows when I go to any new city, I go for a walk and look at the architecture, and I'll go in buildings like, well, when was this built? What happened here? And is that cantilevered? And is that whatever? Is that, right? Yeah, exactly. Is that streamline modern? I think it's more 1920s. No, it's more 1930s. But that's what I get off on. And I get off on the decisions on how it's built and structured and all that. So for me, it's about design of homes and also even clothing and also even like perfumes. I have a good nose. So I feel like I like to, things that are about scent and beauty and art and clothing.
And they don't see this. I've seen you in person. You always smell good. I was like saying at the Oscar luncheon. I was like, you were in and out in like 2 minutes in a waft of like beauty.
Am I the male Rihanna? They always say she smells
Really
good.
though, because you came in there because I think you had on this white suit, and when you left, it like I felt like I was smelling whatever you were trying to project out of that white suit. Like I literally was like, "This man's again." I'm so sorry. I'm not trying to
No,
objectify you. I know you're a happily married man to
go
another
for
man,
it.
and
Go
look at you.
for it. Objectify me. I don't mind it.
We are out of time for me to continue to objectifying you, but I did want to say again, congratulations, and I think all the fashion girlies will just say, I'm very hopeful and anticipatory that I'm about to spend another year watching you stunt on all these folks. And we will leave it at that, right?
Okay, thank you. Oh, this has been wonderful. Thank you.